Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here at Star Cottage Studio, and I'm in the bead room. And we're here for another installment of Alive at 5. It's a little bit after 5, but they're doing some construction in town. And unfortunately, I got caught up in traffic. We never have traffic in our town because we're such a small town, but I got caught in traffic. So here I am now. So I hope you all are having a great start to your week. I saw a lot of you yesterday. We did a cute little demo on, oh, where is it? I think William took it. That's okay. We had a little sheep and we made a little pin yesterday. Super easy, super fun. It was a fun mixed media project. I sold only a couple of them. So hopefully, if you are interested in doing that project, grab one of those. I know not everybody's into sheep, except for like the knitters and crocheters. And we should have some new designs soon. I just haven't had time to do them. So, yeah, I see a couple people have tuned in. If you're watching, say hello and maybe where you're from. Tracy's watching. Hello, Tracy. Marianne's watching. Hey, Marianne. We had a busy weekend. It was a great bead extravaganza weekend. So we were busy, busy, busy. Plus, I had family in. Cynthia and Azalea from Green Girl Studios were up from North Carolina. Azalea is, I think they went to her college, community college today to check things out and talk with a bursar. So hopefully, everything went well. I haven't had a chance to check in with them yet. I'm going to have a little sale so that I can send some money to Azalea so she can start school and not have to worry about stuff as much, So keep an eye out for that. If you're in the know, you're in the know. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I see a couple folks, some other folks watching. Norma says, "Hi, Andrew. The sheep was too cute. I got one." Oh, thank you, Norma. Molly says, "Hey, Andrew." Hey, Molly. Teresa says, joining in from Connecticut. Hey, Teresa. Other Teresa. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Teresa. Jennifer's watching from Newport News, Virginia. Howdy. Lorraine is watching. Hi, Lorraine. Molly says, "You're such a good uncle, Andrew." Well, I try to be, We don't have any kids of our own, at least human children. So, you got to look out for your nieces and nephews, right? Who's going to take care of me when I'm elderly style? Sarah says, hello. Tracy says, I'm in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. Not too far, not too far. Amy's watching. Hello from Alaska. Wow. Hello. Thanks for joining us today. Suzanne says, hello. I know where she is. She's in New Orleans. Emily says, good afternoon. Marianne says, I like sheep and have several. Oh, nice. Well, that's a great segue into what we're doing today. And you're like, what? What segue? Well, I just said that. We are going to do, there was a term that was floating around in the bead world called UFOs. And no, I'm not talking about the little gray men or flying saucers. Well, maybe, maybe, depends on what you're working on. But it's unfinished objects. Unfinished objects. So UFOs. And I can't remember where it was that came from, that I first came across that in the bead world. I think there was a beading club around here somewhere, and they would have unfinished object parties. And so maybe that's where it came from, or it could have come from maybe one of the big shows. I don't remember. But anyways, what it basically is it's an opportunity for you to finish things that you got started but didn't have a chance to finish, which is kind of the story of my life. I have so many things going on, and so many of them are in process, and not so many of them are finished. The way that I work generally is that I have stations set up all around, and I pollinate them kind of like a bee. So a little bit here, then when I get distracted or something, a deadline comes up, then I'll go over to another one and pollinate a little bit there, and then go over to another one and pollinate there. And for a long time, it looks like I don't get anything finished. It just looks like I'm not doing anything at all. And then there comes a point where I've visited my flowers and then I have honey, you know? They all kind of get finished around the same time. So that's pretty exciting for me when that happens because it looks like I'm like super productive. But generally speaking, a lot of times it looks like I haven't done anything at all and like I'm a lazy bum. But that's the way. People don't know until they know. So that's the way that I work. I don't know how all of you work out there. Are you a type of person that when you start something you have to finish it, or are you a person who starts something, lets it linger, maybe gets coffee, watches a show, does something else, and then comes back to it 8 to 10 years later and then finishes it then? I don't know. I know how I work. I think I'm pretty productive, but it can kind of sometimes seem like I'm not, at least not to my standards. Because I know that everybody has different expectations of both themselves and others. And so for me, I guess I put a lot of pressure on myself. So there you go. All right. I see a couple people have commented. Emily says, "Good afternoon. Howdy." Janice says, "I definitely have UFOs in my craft room." And Murgle says, "UFO, LOL. I like that. Hello, Andrew." Hey, Ann. Pam is watching. I'm about to sneeze, but I don't want to thunder strike y'all with my thundering sneeze. Pam says, "Hi, Andrew. Must be Tuesday." Lately, I've been on other days too, but yes, Tuesday is the day that I'm usually here. If you didn't know, if you're new to watching the Allegory Gallery live at 5, usually I'm here on Tuesdays. William is usually here on the other weekdays, but who knows? It's been topsy-turvy. I was on yesterday too. And a lot of the times I'm behind the camera if I'm not in front of it. And Murgle says, "Yes, 10 years later." Doesn't it seem like that? Time flies. Even in a short time, me and Cynthia, we had been working on some stuff and we didn't get it done. We had all these high ambitions of getting stuff done and it just didn't get done. So yeah. Molly says, "I don't have to finish it. I can go back to it." That's good. Norma says, "I have UFOs in every aspect of my life. LOL." Lois says, "I start and stop, take a break." Barbara says, "Hi, Andrew." Hi, Barbara. Facebook user says, "Sometimes I just need to ponder on a project for months." That happens to me too. I feel like for me, I study a lot about creativity and the daily rituals. And when I say ritual, what I mean is any process that can be repeated to create a similar outcome, or a reliable, dependable outcome. So when you talk about ritual in the sense of spirituality, they're like, "I'll light this candle, say this word, and then it makes this thing happen." With daily rituals, it can be I'm going to get up, brush my teeth, drink my coffee, have my breakfast, and then I'll be ready to go. Or I'm going to wear this lucky shirt and tap my head 3 times, and my sports team will win. In a artistic or creative sense, it's I'm interested in how you can condition your brain to have the most optimal response when you sit down to work. So that really fascinates me. I know some people are like, oh, blah, 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 here he goes. But for me, I think it's a cool thing, especially as a professional artist, because sometimes you don't really want to work, you know? Sometimes things don't always want to flow. And for me, my goal is to figure out what will make me in the mood the most to create. So I feel like consistency is a big thing for me. So I try to make something at least once a day. Sometimes it's a small thing, sometimes it's a big thing. Uh, Usually it's a small thing. But yeah, I think it's important to figure out what triggers your creativity so that you don't have to rely on the muses. I read a wonderful book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the one who also wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And Big Magic is all about creative people and big ideas and how to kind of channel and harness those ideas. And one of the things that she talks about is the muses. And it's not a new concept. They're the 9 daughters of Mnemosyne, which is memory in ancient Greek mythology. And those muses would appear and inspire artwork. And a lot of times I've noticed people either they kind of think about that where they have like the muses where they wait for those muses to like pop up and inspire them, or they do other things. Or for me, my kind of ideal situation is where I create an atmosphere where those muses feel comfortable to visit whenever they want, which is hopefully regularly every day. um, and sometimes work, that kind of ritual, is leaving your brain to let go and lay fallow. And that may seem counterproductive, but sometimes you have to turn off your brain sometimes and do something else. And sometimes that's a ritual. So, it just all depends on you and what works best for you. Um, not everything that works for me will work for you, and vice versa. So for me, I like to create circumstances where I I'm able to best harness my creativity. And one of those things is creating a space, even if our space is a big space here, but I used to have a very small space. I lived in New York City and I really didn't have very much room in my apartment, but I had a little area that was designated as a workspace. And Virginia Woolf, she wrote a book called A Room of Her Own, and about how it's very intrinsic and vital for especially a woman writer to have that space so that she can be as creative as possible. And it's a place where the demands of like the everyday life are not don't creep in and distract you from your work and your ability to make that work. So I kind of am in the similar mindset where you have to have a space, whether it's a table in your dining room table, or a little cubby that you can pull out, or like here, a great big place where things are made. So that's one of the things that I think is important for my creativity, is having a space dedicated to creation. There are also little things that I do, like sometimes I'll light a candle or say a positive affirmation, or I will do other things to kind of get me in the zone so that it's an optimal environment to create. There's a thing that says there, I can't remember where it's from, but they said all things need an optimal environment to thrive. And I kind of, for a long time, I kind of just did whatever I did, and it just happened whenever it happened. And I was not very kind to myself or my schedule, or I just sort of forced things. And, I didn't really thrive. But when you are surrounded by, what is good for you and will nurture you, I feel like that is where you really can grow. So, I mean, I'm going way far off of topic today, but I still think that it's all kind of connected. And a part of that is creating community. And I believe that having that community is a powerful tool to encourage you to create and create at your best and optimal levels. So that's why we try at Allegory Gallery so often to build communities so that you can have people who you can rely upon for feedback or for encouragement, and you can root each other on. We're big subscribers to the idea of the rising tide raises all boats. I know that some people are like, what? But if others do well, then you do well. So, yeah, community. So, anyways, I went really way far off of the script. Hello, Harry. And Facebook user says, hi, Andrew. Good afternoon, all. Howdy. Janice says, I try to finish my projects, but sometimes I find that I need something that I don't have at the moment, and it takes me a while to get it. Sometimes that happens. It's like finding that secret ingredient that makes the recipe sing, right? Teresa says, I finish what I start. That's good. I try to finish what I start, but I have to be honest, I don't always do that. Too many ideas and not enough hours in the day. Jody says, when I was crocheting, I had many UFOs. We call them whips or works in progress. Hopefully, I will be better completing my jewelry projects. Well, from my limited experience with you, Jody, I have seen you start projects and finish them, and sometimes you do it right away, and sometimes you percolate on them. But so far, I've seen you finish the projects you've started. So I don't know if that means anything or has any value, but there you go. Pam says, I haven't been able to watch many lives for a month or so with my move. Well, hopefully your move went well and you're able to settle in and, yeah, get back to making and watching and having fun. Molly says, I make a lot of earrings because I can make them and finish them in one sitting. Some stuff I put up and come back to, like necklaces or bracelets. I think that it's very rewarding when you finish a project. It releases chemicals in your brain that they're. I don't know if it's endorphins or serotonin or whatever it is, but you finish a project and then there's a thing that goes off in your brain, and it just is a wonderful feeling. So I like to do a little bit of both. So I do a lot of thinking, and that is probably, it doesn't look like I'm actually doing anything, but I try to do little things that release those chemicals. And then I also do things that are kind of bigger, long-term game plans and are a little bit more complicated and complex and takes more time and energy. But I think for me, I need a balance. And maybe it's because I'm a Libra and I like to have things balanced, all things, both virtue and vice. But yeah, I think it's good to have a balance. Barbara says, I feel so scattered, can't get my mind going to create. Well, I definitely think that there are ways that you can channel your creativity and focus in. One of the best things I can recommend is an idea book. I don't call it a sketchbook. I don't call it a journal. I call it an idea book because it's a repository of ideas. So whenever you have one of those good ideas, you can dip into your idea book, and if you feel stuck, and there you have a repository of ideas, and you're never short of ideas. Sometimes we're short on time and can't do all the ideas we think of, but that's one of the wonderful things that you can do. When I was in art school, I worked with a wonderful artist named Brooke Larson. He taught me all about idea books and really how to harness my creativity. And it was a drawing class, but he said, I can teach you about drawing, but I think what would be more valuable to you as a young artist is how to be an artist and harness that creativity. And that's kind of stuck with me all these years later. So, yeah. Hopefully, I can share some of those ideas that I picked up along the way, and you enjoy those or are able to incorporate those into your practice if they are of value to you. If they're not, then they're not. Like I said earlier, some things that work for me won't work for you, and vice versa. June is watching. Hi, June. Barbara says, putting colors together is hard for me. I end up with color and metal. Grr. Well, that's where I think those inspiration kits are handy because somebody else has already kind of played around with the different color theories, and you can get those and kind of see what sparks your creativity. One thing that I would recommend if you're doing work with color, particularly for your own designs, is to look at your closet. Go through your clothing and see what colors kind of resonate. Another thing that I would say is go through a garden and write down and take pictures of the flowers and keep a little file or document folder of the things that reach out to you. And you'll start to distill which colors resonate with you and the work that you're making. But that's a quick tip. Vanessa says, I'll put something aside when I'm not sure how to finish it or when I'm creatively stifled. How do I get that creativity going again? So there's lots of ways of doing that. I think another thing I briefly mentioned before about community. Community is also a great way to have accountability partners. When you're, I've been talking nonstop and my throat is drying up. So in the small business world, they have accountability partners. And basically that is one of those, a group of people who you state your goals and your intentions, and you work with them to support them, and they support you in reaching those goals. So if you are finding it hard to get something finished, maybe take a picture of it and go into one of our groups. We have a group that's called Allegory Gallery Design Challenges, and it's not all just only the design challenges, but it's a wonderful network of people who are makers and enthusiasts of jewelry and creation, and they all help each other out and support one another. So if you're feeling stuck, say, hey, I feel stuck. What do you think I should do? And sometimes that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes the feedback's good. Usually in our group, it's it's thoughtfully constructed. And it's not like, you should do this, you should do that. Because I kind of hate that myself. Mainly because there's a lot of times where I just want to listen to my own good counsel instead of being inundated with so many ideas and opinions that are not my own. But I think there's a fine line between feedback and criticism and support and being overbearing or smothering. So again, it's all about balance, at least for me. So that's one idea that you can use to embrace your creativity and get unstuck. Let's see. Marianne says, I've been trying to go for a 50-minute walk, 50-minute plus walk in the park, and then come back and have my coffee. I think that that's a good thing. There's a process called walking meditations, and that's one way that can help spark creativity. I know that sometimes people, depends on how you are, but I kind of lean towards more of the woo-woo side of things. And so whenever have a problem and I need to get unstuck, I'll do a walking meditation and I'll hold that question in my mind. And as I'm walking and getting the blood flowing and kind of, thinking about things, but not thinking about things because you have to be kind of aware of your surrounding, then I kind of open myself up for the universe to kind of deliver a symbol to me. Usually it's a rabbit, and usually that means get to work. But at least for me, and being productive. So either that or we just have a lot of rabbits around. But anyways, symbolism is a wonderful thing. It can be very confusing, but it's also a fascinating way to unlock different parts of your subconscious. And there's some wonderful books and research. Carl Jung, he wrote a lot about symbolism and synchronicity and things like that. So if you're interested in that, you can, I think the book is called Interpretation of Dreams, and you can check that out. It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's boring, but there's some stuff in there that you're like, ooh. Or at least I was, but anyways. Teresa says, I work from 8 to 2 daily making jewelry while my daughter is in school. I think that's a good thing to do also, if you can kind of create a consistent work pattern for yourself. That always helps. Bonnie Francis says, hi, Andrew. Hi, Bonnie. Molly says, I think I am ADD because once I get going, I can really hyper focus, but I need a certain environment without distractions. Maybe, I am probably somewhere along that ADHD kind of thing. William and I were talking about the other night, and there are different levels of high functioning and low functioning. So, sometimes people they don't go diagnosed because they are functional, and so it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So a lot of people don't even know if they are working with that factor in their life or not. Molly says, we have been taking the Basset pup out for an AM walk, and when my daughter goes to school in 2 weeks, I'll be doing that on my own. I think that will get me going instead of lagging. I think it's that can help, getting your blood flowing and getting movement. You know, there is a direct correlation between cholesterol in your brain. And I mean, I'm getting kind of off this pseudoscience stuff, but William particularly loves these books about science and how the brain works. And so I kind of absorb through osmosis when he's like listening to something or reading something. I'm like, what are you reading? And then he tells me, and I'm like, oh, and then I'll look over it. But anyways, there's a relationship to cognitive function and cholesterol. And a lot of times those, if you don't have enough cholesterol or you don't have enough iron or different things in your body, it can make you feel cloudy or foggy. And those thoughts don't always carry well. So I think it's a kind of a holistic approach. So not just not just like theoretical or conceptual or kind of the not just the thought of how to do better, but also there is something to be said about the body and that lived in experience that can contribute to your creativity. If that makes any sense, it's kind of like muscle memory. Like you have to have those muscle memories to be able to have, you have to have those muscles to have that muscle memory. So, it's kind of finding that balance between the body and the mind and the spirit and, channeling that. Harry says, I work in 4 different creative areas. When one is hard, I shift to one of the others. I create something every day. Today, one necklace, many raku clay pieces went into the kiln. Cooking tonight. That's great. You're always super productive. At least it seems like it. And I'm always in awe of what you're able to squeeze out of a day. I always feel a little bit like a slacker, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's kind of inspiring. Like sometimes people are like, oh, I feel, like, oh, I don't feel as productive as somebody else. And they see that as a bad thing. For me, I kind of see it as a motivating thing. So, yeah. All right. Tracy says, I love the water and boat quote, the rising tide raises all boats. When I'm not feeling creative, I spend my time crocheting. I think there's something beautiful about keeping your hands busy. Bonnie says, I bought a cottage on a river bluff with a compostable toilet, LOL. I step up from the paint bucket. Oh, good. Molly says, wow, that's really great, Harry. I have had my daughter home for 8 weeks so far, and I have not felt like making anything. I would say make something small, do a pair of earrings. Carve out that time and make time and space for yourself. Barbara says, good idea. Maria says, hello, Andrew. Hello, Maria. Maria says, I have an idea book. Sometimes I write, sometimes I sketch, sometimes I doodle. Yeah, my idea book looks very chaotic. Like Cynthia, I make a lot of lists. So my idea book has a lot of lists. Sometimes I draw things out to kind of work through the mechanics of certain things. I shove business cards into it. I take little pieces of tear out pages from magazines or newspapers or clippings or fabric or even leaves or flowers, and I'll tuck those into the pages of my idea book. So I think it's a really valuable tool. It's a wonderful repository for different ideas. So yeah, Julie's watching. Hey, Julie. Sharon's watching. Hey, Sharon. Teresa says, I have been using an idea book for a long time. Oh, good. It's not really a new concept, but I think sometimes when people think of sketchbooks or art journals, it can be good, but also, I don't want to say bad, but I've looked at some people's journal or their art journals or their sketchbooks, and they become a work of art in themselves. And then people spend a lot of time and energy making these into beautiful objects. And that's great, especially if you find that useful. For me, I feel like if I'm stuck on trying to make something like that beautiful, it's not as useful to me. And I know that kind of sounds counterintuitive, but I feel like I'm more interested in a workhorse than something that is like visually appealing. So some of my idea books looks terrible. There's scribbles, scratches, marks out, and they look very not beautiful. Maybe in like a weird, chaotic kind of a slice of inside my brain, it might kind of be beautiful, but they're not exactly like Cynthia makes beautiful sketchbooks, and those work for her. Azalea's sketchbook, I saw a glimpse of it over the weekend, and it's beautiful. And if it works for you, that's great. But for me, if I tried to make every page look beautiful, I would get no pages done. So that's just me. So if it works for you and kind of that meditative practice of trying to make something aesthetically pleasing and also functional, then that's good. For me, it's kind of quick and dirty, if that makes any sense. Barbara says, thanks. Facebook user says, hello, everyone from Buena Park. I get lost in my happy place. So many ideas, so little time. I agree. Sometimes I search for scenic photos for inspiration. That's a cool thing to do. I do that as well. I follow a lot of travel bloggers and people who post a lot of really beautiful imagery on the internet and Pinterest and Instagram. And that's another thing is we have so many options nowadays. Part of my ideas and pin boards and things like that are all virtual. I do like to work analog so that I have things and I can write in things and hold things and can change things out physically because I do think that matters and is important to my creative process. But there is a lot of stuff that's online that I cannot touch and I only see through a screen. So that's a little bit different, but I think it's still valuable and still useful. And if it's useful, use it. If it's not useful, set it aside and move forward. Marianne says, I take photos for inspiration. That's good. I do too. Like my camera roll on my phone is kind of a mishmash of things. I take photos of stuff that I need to remember stuff also. So I'll take notes. Like I'll be like, oh, I have to remember I have to do this thing. So I'll take a picture of it. I don't collect business cards as much as I used to, unless I actively have my idea book. And mostly it's because if I don't have that and I just stick it in my pocket, I'll lose it. So one of the things that I do is I'll take a picture of somebody's business card and I can write on it and make notes and do stuff in my phone. And that's a great repository for me as well. Molly says, I really like watching lives and videos. I'm a very visual person and I like taking an idea or the kit and watching someone make it, and it gives me a good start. That's good. That's part of why we do what we do. And Molly says, me too, Miriam. Teresa says, I try to make things that match my clothes or people's personalities. I also make artwork that will go where it might be hung. I think that that's a very economical way of thinking about things. And whenever I'm talking, I just talked to somebody who's starting up a jewelry business last Friday. They came in and they were talking about how they were really struggling with their job. So they left their job behind and they were trying to make a go at starting a jewelry business. And so one of the things that I recommended for them and for most people who are doing this kind of thing is to create a customer persona. And that is whether it's a real person, like I'll sometimes will go to a show and I'll say, oh, blah, blah, blah will love this. And we'll be like, oh yeah, XYZ person will really love this and we should get this and carry this in the store. Sometimes that is a very concrete way. And then another thing is, another way is kind of making a psychological profile of your ideal customer. So you'll say, my ideal customer is a woman who is in her, has a steady income and a disposable income and, is creative, likes this book, likes this thing. And even if that's not a real person, you can kind of create a fictional character. And, a lot of times companies will do this and they'll say, well, what will Brenda say about this? And Brenda will be their name for their fictional persona, their customer persona. Or what will XYZ person say about this? And we'll say, well, I don't think that that will necessarily work, or that they would like this, or it's another way of giving a human aspect to the business plan. And what the business plan is it's a kind of it's very logically set out, where you have your mission statements and you have your goals and how to reach those goals. And sometimes having that that customer persona is kind of distilling your mission plan and into a person or an entity that will make it easier to kind of answer those questions. And if something doesn't stick to the mission plan, you know that you can kind of move on and maybe do something that does, and in that way help yourself avoid expending extra resources, energy, or time that you may be short on. So that was a very long-winded way of saying that. Donna says, hello everyone, late to the party. Jacqueline says, I tried to finish UFOs just before the TGBE, so now I have more. Oh, good. Good. Donna says, Molly, I'm that way too. I love to see a video on how to make things, and then I will try it. Yeah, me too. For me, it's important to find inspiration and creativity wherever you can, and to learn as much as you can, however you can. Marianne says, awareness, very important, at 5:30 a.m. LOL. Molly says, hey, Donna, yes, I'm visual. I don't want instructions. I want to see someone make something. Donna says, yes, walking meditation is really helpful. Emily says, I look through magazines and it helps with color schemes. You know, a lot of magazines rely on Pantone. And if you get the September issue of Vogue, like the big one, and you get your Pantone color report for the year, and you go through and you look, you can see they've color graded things, they've changed things, they've incorporated all these colors and to reflect that color report. So it's super, I think it's helpful to know those things. You know, I know some people are like, I don't like trends, blah, blah, blah. I think it's fascinating because trends are something of the moment. And also people are cognitive of where they are and why they are. So Pantone, it might seem like, you know, they're just codifying color, but they do look into why they pick those colors. And they're very thoughtful about that. Ooh. Marion says, hairs to me indicate I need to face my fears and keep on trucking. Donna says, Molly, same here. Debbie says, I have bought supplies for an idea, and then by the time I go to do it, I don't remember what the idea was. I think that's also a good way of having an idea book, or a good reason to have an idea book, because then you can always flip back to this idea and why you got this and match up the supply list, and then you can get right back into why you did that. So it's another way of keeping on track and keeping focused. Diane says, I was diagnosed with ADD a few years ago. They told me that if you don't have the hyperactive part and you're smart, you tend to come up with strategies to function around it. And often it goes undiagnosed because of that. Donna says, my sister loves to read books about the brain and science. William does too. And sometimes I can get into them, and then sometimes I'm like, you know. And Diane says, hello, by the way. Pam says, if I see something in a store, I take a picture for future reference. You have to be kind of careful of that, just because not everybody is okay with people taking pictures. We're fine with it, but I'm in some small business groups, and they're like, some lady came into my store and they be taking pictures and blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's from kind of like an old school mentality, where it's like pre-internet. For us, our business has grown alongside social media and digital resources. So, like, if I see somebody on their phone, I just assume that they're price checking stuff, or they're looking at more information. So, and whether that's true or not, um, that's why it's also important for us to stay somewhat competitively priced in our store, because I know that at any moment somebody can pull up their phone and then be like, "Oh my gosh, how come this is $20 more than it on the internet? I'm just gonna go buy it on the internet." So um, I don't mind it. Some people do. Some people it really bothers them, but so just be mindful of that. Donna says, makes perfect sense. Bonnie says, I like to look back in old books and magazines to get creative inspiration. Sandra says, I love learning about the brain. I love it too if it is in I don't want to say a dumbed down version, but sometimes it goes so theoretical and so sciencey, that I just don't understand it anymore. So, I definitely need practical illustrations of the concepts that are being discussed. Otherwise, feels like it's reading like a textbook to me. And some of the books he has kind of read like that, and I'm just like, I can't. Diane says, I need to make an idea book. I lose so many ideas because I have a terrible memory. That's a good thing too. I think if I didn't have my idea book, I definitely would be less uh, focused. It does help me tremendously to keep on target. Harry Wood says, my idea book has clippings and drawings and idea sketches. My daughter calls them my books of shadows of what might become. Yeah, that's a thing too. When I do, because I'm also interested in plants and studying plants and why plants do things, and I'm fascinated about how plants can heal or harm, and it's very interesting to me to research their folklore. And a part of like the Book of Shadows or the Book of Secrets or grimoire or whatever is understanding how things function and is a collection of those ideas. So like with the plants, sometimes I'll take and put clippings of those plants or draw them at different times of the year because they look different in different times of the year. And you kind of see that creep into my work, not always very directly, but I think sometimes you'll see things and you'll be like, oh, that looks familiar. And then you look at some of my nature photos and then you're like, oh, that's where that came from. Molly says, my daughter was adopted at age 4. She has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So we have lots of brain and brain-based behavior that we go through. Diane says, for me, if it's an art journal or sketchbook, it becomes daunting. I feel intimidated by that. But calling it an idea book, it's more like something you just scratch ideas down so you don't get lost in theory, because I still don't have one. Well, it's never too late. One of the things that we did in Brooke Larson's class was we went to a bookstore and we would go through and find a book in like the dollar rack. And we went to the Strand bookstore. And if you're not familiar with the Strand, it's just off of Union Square, and it's a huge bookstore. And at that time, it wasn't fancy. Like, it's been renovated since then. So, like, I always thought that one way that I might die is that they would find my corpse in the basement of the Strand if the bookcases collapsed, because I was always down there, and sometimes the books were piled so high on those shelves that they did not look structurally sound at all. And I was like, what would happen if they collapsed? And nobody knew, and they just wait. They came in the next day, and then they dug around, and there I am in the bottom. But anyway, so we went to the little dollar section, or less, and would find different books that kind of resonated with us. And then we'd gut the books out and put our own pages in. And that way you can customize your paper. And also, it's kind of like a synergy with the universe. And also, if you have an idea book, sometimes you can kind of hide it also, which if you need to think about that. But anyways, that's another story for another day. Teresa says, my idea book is messy. I use it to start an idea, sometimes not finishing it. Azalea uses her iPad as an idea book a lot of times, I've noticed. So just because it doesn't have to be just paper too. Especially I've noticed a lot of younger people will use technology so that they can do different things like keep a repository of their ideas. Donna says, I do keep up with the Pantone colors for the year. I think it's really fun. It's like the secret decoder ring, because then you're like, oh, I see, they use this, they use this. So I love them. I dream about maybe one day working for Pantone, because I am a fangirl for it. So Suzanne says, some stores state you cannot take pictures. I went to this one store in Hawaii, and it was an antique store, and they were very much no pictures. There were signs everywhere, no pictures, no pictures, no pictures. And so, yeah. And Pam's talking about how she only does that at department stores. Some people care about it, some people don't. So you just have to use your own best judgment about it. I don't care if people take pictures in our store. I actually encourage it. And if you do take pictures, make sure to tag us. Facebook user says, I love plants and all nature. Love to investigate different cultures too for inspiration. Me too. Donna says, I have several art journals, but I need to start an idea book. I do have a sketchbook for jewelry pieces that were remade from vintage beads. That's cool. Suzanne says, Pam, when is a hardware store? Yeah, you never know. Some people like it if you take pictures, and some people don't. All right, I've reached the bottom of the comments, so I'm going to flip this around, and we're just going to get going, all right? Cynthia says, yeah, you want people to come to the store, so pick some videos are great. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's super useful, at least for us. Some people are not into it, and that's up to them. So I'm going to flip this around, and then we'll get to those unfinished objects. So you're going to see the ceiling for a second. And you're going to maybe see up my nose. If you do, just ignore that. We're going to go to the back camera. All right. So here's my work surface. And you're going to be like, what? He's got those things from the TGBE. Correct. Ooh, that was a little bit abrupt. So I made these during the Great Bead Extravaganza. These are they are toggles, believe it or not. They're not just pretty pendants, which they could be, but they are pretty cool because they actually function as well. So I thought what I would do is I would use this one. And this is one that I did off camera, but I did it in a similar way, and with the decoupage, adding that layer underneath. And then I added layers of paints and pigments, and these have mica chips in them. And let me get the toggle bar. And if you're wondering what the toggle bar looks like, it looks like this. Now, if you are interested in this toggle, it is available on the website. That's allegorygallery.com. It's a part of our IG fine pewter collection. Now, if I wanted to, I could also paint this. I probably would use vintage patina paints. They've discontinued that and have come up with a new formula, but I have some from before and I love them. So I'm going to keep using them until I run out. I like them. So why fix it? So I'm going to use that. Now, also, this past week, we had some visitors, and one of our visitors was Kristen Fagan from Softlex, and her Discover Your Creativity. Uh, yeah, so she came and visited, and Cynthia was here, and everybody worked on making kits. So we have these designer created kits. So one of them is this one. It's a green one. It's available online at allegorygallery.com. And I thought that this kit here would go really well with the toggle. So I thought that would go really well with this. So I think that that's something I'm going to work on really quickly. It's just going to be simple stringing. It's not going to be anything over the top wild or anything, but I really like this kit. And I think it's a really beautiful kit. So these green colors really speak to me. So I think that I'm going to use these in my design. What do you think? So this is one of the things that I kind of want to do, I think. I'm kind of narrowing it down what the color palette is going to be. I've got a little bit of gold and I got a little bit of silver, so it's a little bit of mixed metal action there. So I think I might do that. Before I go too far into working on this project and stringing it up, I'm going to finish one of those unfinished objects. And if you were also tuning in last week, we did our creative make-along for our Royal Road Challenge. I think there's one left online. So if you were inspired by that, then you grab it before it's sold out, because once it's sold out for good. The Royal Road kit is a lovely blend of cranberry reds and garnet with gold, and I love it. So I started this video on our creative make-along, which is the Zoom that we do that correspond with our kits. We just started doing that a couple kits ago, and it's been really fun and we've really enjoyed it. So this is a piece that I started when we were working, but I didn't get a chance to finish it. We were super busy, and it's a little bit tricky when you're trying to like read comments and moderate the conversation, and then also make a piece on top of it. It's like rubbing your stomach and patting your head, or rubbing your head and patting your stomach, however they say that is. Yeah, so I finally got a chance to string everything up. So I'm going to finish it off by adding a clasp. And this is just a simple, easy peasy, it's basic stringing, and it's not anything overly complicated. What I did to make this piece is I made these wire wrap dangles. Those are from head pins with some of those glass pearls and some of those glass daisy spacers and that check glass tube, texture tube. And then I strung those up and turned those into wire wrap dangles with the head pins. And then I strung those up. I think it gives it a very dramatic kind of bib style. It's a statement necklace for sure. It's something that you're going to wear when you feel confident or want to feel confident. Uh, and you'll probably want to wear this with something that is clean lines and not super over the top frilly, because that will kind of compete with this. So I think it's a lovely, dramatic kind of statement piece, and I think it turned out pretty well. So I like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this crimp tube, and if my nails look yellow, it's because I've been making paper, and I've been using these eco dyes. I've been working with a little bit of turmeric and some other things, and it's stained my nails yellow. So if I it looks like I've been a smoker with it, what they call it, nicotine stains, that's what that is. It's not from that, from smoking the nicotine, the cigarette. So anyway, so I strung this on to my flexible beading wire. This is soft flex medium beading wire. I strung my crimp tube on there. I'm going to pass it through my crimp, one side of my clasp. I'm going to fold over that beading wire and pass it back through that crimp tube. Now, one of the number one repairs that we used to do in the store, we don't do a ton of repairs anymore, but when we did a lot of repairs, one of the biggest repairs that we did is from when people did not string up their projects using the appropriate crimp tubes. A lot of times people would use the cheapest crimp tubes available, and that is kind of detrimental because when you work with a weaker metal, and aka cheaper metal, it's not a question of if it will break, it's when it will break. So if it's a non-structural thing, maybe you're fine for several years. It depends. But if it's a structural piece, like a clasp, uh, that tends to wear on those crimp tubes a lot quicker. So get the best crimp tubes that you can afford. I like solid metal ones like copper or sterling silver or gold filled. Gold filled or vermeil is a layer of gold on top of sterling silver. So um, do yourself a kindness and get really good crimp tubes, and you'll thank yourself later. So this is my crimping plier. That's another thing that I saw a lot of when we did repairs is people would just smash the crimps down, and that's fine. However, it's kind of like if I grab you and I only just kind of hold your hands in between my hands. Um, it will hold for a while, but unless I grab on tight, it's not going to be as effective. So there's two notches in the crimping pliers. There's one closest to the hand and one closest to the tip. I just use this, the one closest to my hand, to squeeze this shut. It created what I call, it made the taco. And what that means is it made um, a little divot that runs across, and that will help my crimp tube fold on that side. So I'm going to turn my taco, or aka my crimp tube, on the side, and I'll use the notch closest to the tip, and then I will squeeze that shut. And there you go, easy peasy. And then what I like to do is sometimes these little ends will stick out underneath beads. So I will get those and trim those pretty close. And then that way these don't poke you in the back of the neck. Now, if you wanted to dress this up and your wire is not the right color, say that if you wanted to have this be less utilitarian looking, you can get a product called French wire, which is basically super fine wire that's been coiled, and it makes this kind of slinky like wire that's hollow, and you can cut off a little bit and put that over, and it can disguise your flexible beading wire if you want it to be like gold and you have a gray cord flexible beading wire. Now, another thing that you can do is if you don't like the look of this copper, is you can use a crimp cover and cover it up, and then nobody knows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to string everything down, push everything down so that there isn't a big wide gap. And I'm going to measure off a couple inches. Now, when I first started making jewelry, I tried to be super, super duper thrifty with the flexible beading wire. For me at the time, it was an expensive kind of part of my jewelry making. And so I tried to get the most out of it as possible. So I tried to give myself just a tiny, tiny little bit to work with to get past through. The thing about that is that it's very, very, very tedious if you do it that way. And it will sometimes make you not want to make jewelry if you're messing around, trying to squeeze stuff in, trying to maneuver that 3 millimeters of beading wire. If you are, it's very frustrating. So I like to give myself a healthy amount. It's basically like 5 cents of beading wire. It's not like a huge expense, but it is enough that I can comfortably take things off, put things on. If I need to give myself space, if I'm going to put crimp covers on things, I can do that. If you didn't see what I just did, I put a crimp tube on. I passed it through half of the clasp, that toggle bar. And then if you're having trouble getting that wire to go back in, because sometimes it will want to go in an angle, hold the wire parallel to each other and then just twist the crimp tube and it will slip right over the both wires. And then I just pull this taut so that it's tighter. Now, when I'm stringing, I like to keep things nice and flexible. You can see right now it's not very flexible. So I need to give myself a little bit extra room. And that will give it a little bit of more flexibility. And see, this is stiff. This is stiff. If I bend this, it will break. So bend, don't break, like those affirmational quotes say. And it can sometimes look weird, like when you have exposed wire at the end here. However, you're not going to actually see that at the back of your necklace. So I've kind of bend my pieces around, and that kind of gets that wiggle test so that my pieces have a nice drapeability to them. And so that when I wear them or somebody else wears them, they have a fluidity to them and they're not basically a glorified bookmark when they're super stiff and won't bend. So I've got enough room on my wire to do that. Another thing that I should mention when you're doing a crimp tubes is make sure that your wires are parallel inside of your crimp tube. And that is a good thing to keep in mind because sometimes your crimps or your beading wire will cross itself when it's underneath that crimp tube. And what that can do is when you go to close up your crimp tube, it can those wires can cross and they can cut each other inside of your crimp tube, which is less than desirable. So do yourself a favor and make sure that your beading wire is parallel to each other when you close up your crimp tube. All right, so here we go. This is my Royal Road Challenge, and it's one of my unfinished objects that I just finished. So I'm going to lay this down, and you'll see it. So it's a shorter necklace, but when you wear it, it fans out kind of like so. All right. It'll have it. It gets a little bit more of its oomph when it's worn. Flat, these kind of tend to look like that, which is fine. But when it's worn, it flares out and has a little bit more drama. All right. I see a couple folks have commented. Teresa says, I love learning about mushrooms and how they can be used to help our body. There is a wonderful movie called Fantastic Fungi. I think it's on Netflix or maybe Amazon Prime, one of those. But it's a really beautiful movie. But they also talk about some of the health aspects of it. And, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not prescribing you to go and take psychedelic mushrooms, but if you watch that movie, there are people who do, and it has helped them combat depression and deal with end of life situations. So, anyways, there you go. Lorraine says, I think they look great. Thanks. Donna says, oh my gosh, or OMG, I got my kits yesterday and they're stunning. Thank you, Donna. Julie says, I'm doing some decoupage today because I loved your GBE class. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Donna says, I got 3 sets out of my Royal Road kit. Had so much in it. Andrew, that's stunning. Thanks. Molly says, I just got my Royal Road in my order last night. So looking forward to using it. Oh, good. Pam says, love those colors. Thanks. Now, the nice thing about these is you can also make a corresponding set of earrings very easily. You could just make these drops just like that and add an ear wire and you're done. Easy peasy. Or if you wanted, you could get that Halloween kit that we debuted during the GBE if there's still some available. I don't know if it's sold out or not yet, but those go really, really well with this kit. Can you tell that I have a mild obsession with red and gold? I don't know what it is, y'all, but I do. I think there was a book called Blood and Gold, and I was like, oh. Jody says, it is beautiful. Thank you, Jody. Donna says, totally understand that. It can be very frustrating. So I think if you give yourself enough material to work with, you do end up with some scrap, but it's better than you being frustrated and then losing desire to finish it. I think if you set yourself up for success, you can create an opportunity for you to thrive and really enjoy making instead of being frustrated. It's kind of like cooking and having only enough flour to do something, and so when you're rolling it out to make bread and it starts sticking to everything, and so just having that little bit of extra flour helps make it so it doesn't stick to everything. Jody's has some heart eyes. Thank you. Marianne says, nice use of the beads. Thanks. Molly says, that's beautiful, Andrew. The kit is really lovely. Thank you, Molly. Sharon says, very nice, Andrew. Thanks. Teresa says, saw that movie, learned a lot of things about mushrooms. Oh, good. It's a really beautiful movie. There's an author from Mount Dora, Florida, who wrote Kingdom of the Fungi, I believe is the name of the book. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful book. If you love mushrooms and enjoying them and their aesthetics, then I definitely recommend it. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I can picture him in my mind. He did this really cool thing where he went and traveled the world to find these mushrooms that sing, and has done all these different ones that like glow in the dark. And I think they even made stamps off of some of his images. So anyways, yeah, really cool. Um, and I love that book. Pam says, I ordered the Halloween kit. Can't wait to get it. Lorraine says, nice. Teresa says, absolutely beautiful necklace, Andrew. Teresa says, red and gold are so beautiful together. I do think it adds kind of a richness and opulence. It definitely gives that kind of a little bit of glamour, razzle dazzle, as I like to say. Don says, if I get frustrated with a piece, I put it down and walk away. I think that's a good thing to do, because sometimes when you try to work on something and you're frustrated, it can make things harder than they need to be. Especially, I was talking to Cynthia about this. Sometimes we're on camera and it's super hard to do stuff that you do normally. And I think it's because there's that added extra pressure of doing things on camera. So yeah. Donna says, I've been always been fascinated by mushrooms. Marianne says, mushrooms are an indicator of healthy soil. Yeah. So, all right. I'm going to put this off to the side. I think I'm going to do, um, next. So, speaking of Cynthia, when she was here, she did a demo and she was having a hard time showing this technique. And there is a way of doing this, and I don't want to step on her toes or anything, but this is the way that I do it. So I found these little bits of chain link that she left when she was cutting the chain, or when they cut the chain for her kit. She said, "Do it." And I thought I would show you how I do these wraps. All right, so here you go. Here's this link. If you want this to lay flatter, you can always take it on a bench block or anvil and use a nylon hammer, rubber hammer, or nylon, rawhide, or rubber hammer, and do that on an anvil, and it will flatten it out. Cynthia says, I had a hard time getting close enough to see it through the screen. And so I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you can see. But I have a different way of doing it. And so it may be helpful for you who have brains that work similarly to my brain. And so hopefully this is useful. So I don't have the tourmaline that she has in her kit. So I just grabbed this bead and it fits. This is a link of paper clip chain. Actually, this could be slightly smaller. Let me use this Matsuno seed bead because it's more akin to the size of the paper clip chain. Here goes that red and gold again, y'all. All right. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get some wire. The thinner the wire you get, the easier it will be to manipulate the wire. I'm going to use 24 gauge wire. This is a brass craft wire. I'm going to cut off about 2.5 or so inches of that wire. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my round nose pliers out, these ones, and I'm going to go down about 1/2 inch or so, and I'm going to bend this over. And I'm going to use just the tippy tip of that so that the bend is pretty tight. If I need to, you can make a loop, just open it back up, and just be mindful of that. So you should have what that looks like a little hook. All right. So you're going to get that hook and you're going to put this on your paper chip paper chip or paper clip chain like so. And then it's also handy to have fine nose pliers. If your nose are too big, they'll get in the way. So use these fine nose pliers. And if you're just tuning in, my nails are stained yellow. It's not because I'm a smoker. It's because um, I've been making paper. And so what I like to use is these pliers because sometimes this end can get sharp and that sharpness can cut your fingertips and is less than delightful. All right. And then you just kind of wrap this around and you coil it however many times you need so that it's secure. Cynthia had a great tip in her presentation where she said she doesn't like to do it too tight because if you do it too tight, when you're going to string your bead and have a placement in your piece, it will you won't be able to successfully do like maneuver it. So get that in there. Use those fine tip pliers and really get in there and you can get in there and coil this around easy peasy. But I'm not going to do it too hard at first because if you do it too hard at first, like I just said, in her video, she is talking about how if you do it too hard at first, you can actually lock it in place and it's not going to be in the place you want it to be. So don't do it too hard at first and then find out where you need to go and then bend that over like so. So this is where I like it. I'm going to kind of tighten this up a little bit. And then I'm going to string this on like so. Pass it in there and it's going to fit right there in the middle. And then since I did it on this side, I'm going to try to do my coil. I'm going to put this down on there. Since I did my coil on this side, I'm going to try to do it on this side, but it's an aesthetic thing. So if you want it to be on the same side, you can have it on the same side. I'm going to try to cover up that cut in there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with the directional, the direction of the wires. So I'm going to, if this is going over, I'm going to go over with it. You know, I'm not going to try to go under when it's naturally going over. All right. And then so I'm going to get this and maneuver this. And it's good to have that extra little bit of wire so that if you do need to manipulate it, you have enough wire to do that comfortably without it getting too chewed up. It can be smooth and nice and have a nice kind of this is so I realize that in this my camera is not in focus as much as it could be. So just bear with me one moment, please. All right. And then I'm going to trim this. And then I'm going to go back around my coil and tighten it up. Let me raise this up a little bit. I feel like I may be too close. And also, Cynthia was using my setup, which is different than her setup at home. So that's another reason why sometimes it's hard to do things, especially if you're used to doing it a certain way. And then on camera, you know, then you're like, oh, now I have to do like jump through these extra hoops. Um, and you can kind of cinch these down closer, or it's up to you about how you want this to go. If you want it to be more at a diagonal, or if you want that to be more horizontal. And then just kind of gently guide that like so. All right. And if you wanted to turn this into an earring, you could definitely do that. You could also add multiple, um, you can add multiple kind of beads in there, and you can also wrap the whole entire link if you wanted to as a decorative element. Cynthia says, I did get nervous when I realized I didn't have my size pliers and had to use those huge ones. Yeah, I could have grabbed you some, but I know how, like, if you're on camera, it's like, oh, what am I doing? So if you're going to make this into an earring, you can easily do that by just opening this up like so. This has a loop on the bottom of the, oh, I dropped it on the floor, y'all. I also realized I dropped my bag of crimp tubes on the floor, so that should be fun to pick those up later. So just open that up the same way you would do a jump ring, and then close it the same way you would do a jump ring. So a jump ring, whenever you're doing that, instead of pulling it apart like this and distorting the shape, you just slightly twerk it like this and slip it on and then close it. If there's a gap, you open it up and close it and push it past the point and then roll it past and it will click into place. And there you go. So that's pretty cute. And if you wanted to add like a head pin at the bottom, you could definitely do that. I've got a head pin here. And let's see. This is also from the Royal Road kit. And you could put that on there. And you could put that on the bottom. I'm going to do that right now. Really quick. Super easy. Nothing overly complicated, you know? Sometimes you need those wins, I feel. So you get those unfinished projects out of the way and they're nice. So just open that up. Now this head pin is a little bit stiffer because it is a plated one. So it's a little bit stiffer, but not too bad. I like to hold this stationary like so, and then use my pliers to wrap it because I can wrap more firmly. Notice I'm not holding on. I kind of let the wire do what the wire wants and then go back on top of it like so. And then before I get to the end, I'm just going to cinch this a little bit so that when it folds in, it's kind of like a hurricane. Think of it like the bands of a hurricane. If it's sticking out, it's going to stick out and potentially um, poke you. But if it's kind of curved in, when you tuck this in, it's going to want to nestle in nice and good, and it's going to hug that coil. And I kind of bent it a little bit extra, but that's okay. All right. And then so if I want, I can also take and make sure the direction of the paddle on this is in the right direction so that when you wear this, you'll get that little glint of light as you're wearing it. All right. So there you go. You can use your extra links from that chain, from that kit. That kit is available on Cynthia's website. That's greengirlstudios.com. And you can grab that, and it's a lovely kit. There's one of her antique gold bees. It's called the Honey Garden, and it's a really beautiful kit. Sylvia says, when feeling nervous, if you can remember that those of us watching your demos support you and appreciate that you're human. Yeah, that's nice. I think that's one of those things where, it's it's a challenge. Even if you've done this a million times, if you're in a new environment, or you're working with a material that you're not used to doing on camera, it can always be a little bit tricksy. But I think it's you know, like Sylvia said, you're human, and people appreciate that. All right, so we made these. We finished that one necklace up, this one. And then next up, I'm going to finish up this necklace. And I think I'm just going to do something pretty simple. I'm going to string this up using these kind of brass gold metal spacers, and then put these in between. And then I think on either side of these, I'm going to flank these with some sequins, maybe. I don't know. I am, what time is it? I think it's, I was trying to get done by 6 because I know one of the other presenters goes on around then. So I'm going to actually just say goodbye, so that you can, if you're going to watch some of the other presenters who are on now, you can hang out with them. We do our best to not run over our kind of unofficial time slots, but Helen says, hello, been listening while making dinner. Lentil tacos. Thank you for the insight. Donna says, thank you so much. All right, so let me flip this around. And yeah, we did mostly talking today. So we did mostly talking, but we did a couple of things. I finished this necklace. We talked about the brain and creativity. And we talked about the new kits. There's lots of new kits in the online store. Go check those out. If all goes well, I'll be down in North Carolina this week. And so Cynthia and I will probably make some more kits. They made some paper while they were here, so I'm going to bring that down. I'm also going to bring Azalea's blacksmithing stuff that they left here. So that'll be fun. We're going to hang out. We're going to try to shop the show, one of the big wholesale shows. So if there's anything that you're looking for, let us know. You can email us at info@Allegory Gallery, or leave it in the comments. So if you're looking, you're like, I need some appetite in size blah, 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 and I've got a budget of blah, blah, blah. I can kind of keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be real with y'all. Prices of things have gone up, and some of my vendors have already emailed me, and they said, I just want to warn you, prices have gone up. So things that I used to get for very little are not very little anymore. So just keep that in mind when you see some of the prices. We're going to do our best to get the prices down as low as possible. I'm a pretty frugal shopper. So just, I'm going to get the best deals that I can get. But also, just keep in mind that things are going up and have been going up. And sometimes, like in the bead world, it's catching up, because those, the height of the inflation that we've just kind of, I don't want to say that the height of inflation is over, but, there's fuel expenses from a couple months ago, and those are going to be reflected in the prices that you're going to see now, if that makes sense. Because I know somebody was talking about, oh my goodness, how come the sterling silver is so expensive when the price of sterling is down? And sometimes the reason why is that, when the manufacturing costs are more, and so even though the price of silver is less, the manufacturing costs are more. And so that's why it's not as cheap as it could be, if that makes sense. Um, so we're super excited to be hanging out with my sister and her family in North Carolina. We're going to be going to the art opening. I'm like my art opening, but it's a group show. So it's kind of my art opening. And it's the anniversary. It's at the Silver Fern in Cookeville, Tennessee, which I thought was closer to Asheville than it actually is. It's actually like 3 hours away from Asheville, a little bit more. In my mind, I thought it was in Knoxville, which is way closer. It is not. So that'll be interesting. I will, if I have Tanya Crane's class at Touchstone like the next day. So we have to drive pretty much all night to get back in time. But if we time it just right, I may be able to go to Noodle Nirvana in Brea, Kentucky, which I've been wanting to try since 2018. Our friend May owns that, and they started a sandwich shop also in that time period. And I have been dreaming about their food and salivating so hard on the internet. And we met in Reno during, we all won these 2018 Small Business Champion for SCORE. And so that's where we first met. And since then, I've been dreaming of their food. And I was like, how am I going to get over to the middle of Kentucky? And I think this may be the time. So who knows? Also, one of my other friends, Abby, or that we met in Reno, she's closing down a bookstore, which I didn't even know she had. I know she made soaps and bath bombs and stuff, but they were also running an online bookstore, which I had no clue about, and they're closing it. And so I want to go in there and get some of these jewelry books and things like that. So maybe I'll make a little detour to South Carolina. You never know. It's not too far. They have crystals there, so I can kind of maybe write it off as a business expense. So yeah. Cynthia says, love that kit with those beads. Thanks. One of the things that I love about the kits that we recently debuted is that so many of them can go with one another. You can take little elements from this kit and mix it with that kit. Cynthia's kit, the lizard kit that she made, would work so well with this as well, So you could mix and match and still have lots of leftovers to do lots of amazing things. Excuse me. June says, thank you, Andrew. Marianne is looking forward to finish the finished necklace with Kristen's kit. Donna says, oh, how fun. That will be great. Sylvia says, looking forward to seeing the completed green and gold piece. Sylvia says, the one with your customized toggle. Jody says, have fun in North Carolina. Really enjoyed watching you this week with all of your company/family. Yeah, we had a great time. In my mind, we were going to go on a lot more than we actually did, but we probably went on just the right amount without making ourselves go crazy. Some of the times we wanted to go live from some of the walks we took, but they were so kind of remote. And off the beaten internet path that we weren't getting a signal. So I tried to go live a couple different times when we were on our walks. But if you follow Cynthia's Instagram, that's Green Girl Studios, all one word, all lowercase. You should be able to see some of the videos. I added a couple reels. But it's and I think even Kristen added a couple, and maybe William will. I don't know if he's added any, but yeah. Norma says Bria is close to me and one of my favorite towns in Kentucky. I'll have to try it out. Yeah, they open. I'll send you the info of the restaurants because they're really good. At least I think they're really good. So I'm excited. Hopefully I can make the timing work out. Sylvia says safe travels and enjoy more special time with your family and friends. Yeah, I'm excited. This is the first time that some of my artwork has been in a physical show in a long time. So I'm excited to see it. I'm a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious about it. It's kind of the people who are in the show are a little bit of the who's who of the contemporary metal smithing community. So, like, one of the people who is also in the show runs the metal department for a college that produces some pretty amazing metalsmiths. So it's a little bit intimidating, but also it's a really big honor. And so I'm super grateful for this opportunity. And if you happen to be in Cookeville, Tennessee on July 30th, let me know and maybe we'll meet up there. Teresa says, grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, lots of crystals. Yeah, the place we're probably going to try to maybe go to is called Abbeville. And I don't know if that's a day trip possibility or if it's also in my mind of things that would be great, but won't work out logistically. So we'll see, because this is a really super short trip. It's like we're going to be down and back up in a matter of a couple days. Molly says safe travels and enjoy more family time and your show. Take us along when you can. Will do. All right. Thanks, everyone. I will post a picture in maybe the design challenge group of my finished piece using the toggle that I made during the Great Beat Extravaganza, or the toggle that I embellished in the Great Beat Extravaganza, and one of Kristen's kits from when she was here. All right. I'll see you all later. Hopefully you enjoyed today's live. If you did, we would appreciate you sharing it. And of course, make sure to stop on over to allegorygallery.com. Check out all of the new things. We have lots of new things. We add things every single day, pretty much. So hopefully you all will enjoy those. All right. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.